What's happening, everybody? I'm Todd Tanner. Welcome to Wrestling News Now. He was considered to be the dean of all broadcasters and commentators in the world of professional wrestling, Gordon Solie. Gordon Solie was an American, Florida based professional wrestling play by play commentator, announcer, working for Georgia Championship Wrestling. Championship Wrestling from Florida, USA Championship Wrestling, Continental Championship Wrestling, and World Championship Wrestling. This evening, I will be profiling the life and career of the one and only, the legendary, the icon, Gordon Solie. And this will probably be part one of a two-part profile of Gordon Solie because there's so much information to go over, and I'm not going to rush through it. I'm going to take my time. But before I get started on this evening, would you kindly like and subscribe to Wrestling News Now with Todd Tanner? And in the comment section, let me know what you think of the product and how we can make it better. And don't forget, this is a relatively new channel. We've only been at this going on 3 weeks. And even though we have 4 subscribers, I think and I know that we're going to be a whole lot better. Now let's get right down to Gordon Solie on tonight. So I take my salute to Gordon Solie and his memory. Gordon Solie was born Francis Gennard Labayak, later Gennard Pierre Joplin. He was born on the 26th of January of 1929. And he passed away on the 27th of July, 2000. Gordon Solie was an American, Florida-based professional wrestling play-by-play announcer working for Championship Wrestling. Championship Wrestling from Florida, USA Championship Wrestling, Continental Championship Wrestling, and World Championship Wrestling. He is regarded by many as the greatest and most influential wrestling announcers. Jim Ross cites him as the most significant influence on his career as an announcer. So how did it all get started? And this is something that individuals need to always figure out. Even though I know you like the entertainment, the theatrics, the drama, all that stuff is wonderful. But always remember that there is a beginning or a genesis to everything. So let's find out exactly how Gordon got started. Solie was born, as I said, on January 29, 1929 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His parents divorced at a young age. His mother then remarried, and her new husband adopted Gordon at the age of 4. He attended Southwest High School in Minneapolis, where he chose radio as a major and went by the nickname Hosey. He ran the school PA system and participated in several high school productions and drama workshops at local radio stations. He moved to Tampa, Florida in the 1950s after completing military service in the United States Air Force, or the United States Air Force, I should say. Early in his career, Solie worked as a stringer. He learned about stock car racing by competing as an amateur chauffeur on Florida's Sun Coast and announcing outdoors at tracks around the United States. He conducted radio interviews with other stock car drivers and boxers, and in his spare time, visited libraries to learn about the human anatomy. Solie began his pro wrestling career as a ring announcer, making $5 a night. And some of you complain making $15 per hour. Imagine making $5 a night as a wrestling announcer every night. MCing weekly shows in the Tampa Bay area, learning about the sport from John Heath, Eddie Graham, and Don Curtis. He soon began working for Championship Wrestling from Florida, and in 1960 he moved into the broadcast booth to become the lead announcer for CWF's Saturday morning television shows, a spot he would occupy for the next quarter century. During that time, He commentated on matches featuring some of top pro wrestling's biggest legends, including WWE Hall of Famer Dusty Rhodes, the Briscoe brothers, and Dory Funk Jr., among numerous others. Solie rose to national prominence when Superstation WTBS began broadcasting pro wrestling, and the exposure helped him branch out, leading to Solie working for promotions in Georgia, Alabama, and Puerto Rico. A technique that Solie used was when he wasn't speaking words into a microphone, he actually recorded them on paper for remembering. Much of his fame stems from the gravely sound of his voice, calling the in-ring action, and his unique lingo, and is often called the Walter Cronkite of wrestling, or the Howard Cosell of wrestling. He sometimes is incorrectly credited for originating the term Pier 6 Brawl to describe a wild brawl, and was also notorious for noting when a bloodied superstar was wearing a crimson mask. His often imitated signature call of a superplex as a suplex. His signature sign-off was "So long from the Sunshine State," followed by a wink. In 1987, a board game, Gordon Solie's Championship Wrestling Trivia Game, was released by Sports Entertainment International Incorporated. Solie eventually entered Wrestling Myth, and often stayed out of angles, but lots of them became historic once he was involved. One such angle was in Georgia when the magnificent Morocco confronted Solie, threatening to hurt him. Solie's broadcast partner, Roddy Piper, saved Solie during turning babyface in the process. According to wrestling lore, Solie had wrestlers that he was interviewing place him in hold so he could understand them better and call them more realistically, because he wanted to learn how it felt to be on the defensive end of a hold. He also made a point to never learn a wrestler or manager's real name, because he wanted to avoid making the mistake of calling someone by name other than the person in which they were working. Very important to remember. Following the folding of CWF in 1987, Solie returned to Georgia and became one of the lead announcers for the NWA, or National Wrestling Alliance, and later WCW World Championship Wrestling television programs. Solie was once asked to join the World Wrestling Federation but declined the offer as the company wanted him to wear a tuxedo. Solie also worked for the Continental Wrestling Federation and the USA Championship Wrestling, based out of Knoxville. That was a natural transition to the Dean, who had often been Georgia Championship Wrestling's lead announcer before it became a subsidiary of NWA/WCW. He remained there until his eventual retirement in 1995. The last event that he appeared in was the 1999 Slamboree, or the 1995 Slamboree. Solie had also worked for New Japan Wrestling as a commentator for overseas tapes and videos. Following his retirement from the sport, he started to dislike the product, saying it was a damned shame that wrestlers had turned into roid freaks, and lamented the lack of respect for the history of the business. Well, I don't think I'll have to make two videos as well, so let me keep on talking. Solie's last announcing job was to be the Heroes of Wrestling by pay-per-view in 1999, but he could not attend due to failing health. He was diagnosed with cancer soon after his retirement, and in the late 1990s, his vocal cords were removed due to throat cancer. He died of the disease on July 27th, 2000, at the age of 71. His wife, Eileen, known to friends as Smokey, had died 3 years before, also from cancer. In 2005, Florida Media Incorporated published a collection of Solie's short stories and poetry in Gordon Solie, Something Left Behind. Solie was survived by his 5 children. I'm not going to name them. In 2005, Solie's posthumously released memoir, Gordon Solie, Something Left Behind, became a bestseller. On March 29, 2008, Jim Ross inducted Solie into the WWE Hall of Fame in the class of 2008, appearing on Solie's behalf for his 5 children. So also remember, later that year, WWE's or the WWE Class on Demand video service began offering the Film Room with Gordon Solie, hosted by Ross, focusing on Solie's announcing and interviewing of a specific wrestler or group of wrestlers involved in a feud. On August 11, 2009, Solie's biography, The Solie Chronicles, was released by Crowbar Press. In 2019, Dylan Dilbert from the Bleacher Report stated, debating the greatest pro wrestling commentator comes down to 2 men, Jim Ross and Gordon Solie. Well, there you have it. Let's talk about some of Gordon Solie's accomplishments. It's very important to know that your peers highly esteem what you're doing and they honor you. In 1999, the Cauliflower Alley Club, he was the honoree in 1996 rather. George Trogo's through Les Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame Gordon Solie Award of 2021. The National Wrestling Alliance NWA Hall of Fame class of 2005. Pro Wrestling Illustrated PWI Announcer of the Year 1977. PWI Editors Award 1989. Pro Wrestling This Week Wrestler of the Week August 9th through 15th in 1987. Gordon Solie, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and Museum, he was inducted in the class of 2004. World Championship Wrestling WCW Hall of Fame class of 1995. World Wrestling Entertainment, the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2008. Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards. He was awarded the Best Television Announcer from 1981 to 1983. There you have it. Gordon Solie, the Dean of all wrestling broadcasters and commentators. Until next time, for World Wrestling News Now, I'm Todd Tanner.